What is going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here. It's Dean 7904 if you want to get all technical on me. It is 4:15 on the East Coast, 1:15 West Coast, 3:15 Tennessee time. So, of course, I'm just time for the flagship show. And I keep saying that, and I guess it's not the flagship show because the show that follows us, I presume, is the flagship show. This is basketball. Following us is baseball, 5:15 on the East Coast. That's Derek Carty and Stevie TPFL. We're talking basketball, 11 gamer. It's myself and Grant Neefer, that floating head you got. I presume, is that what the people are seeing there? Are they seeing a floating head because Grant doesn't understand how green screens work?
Yes, I do understand. I do this intentionally. Ooh, ooh.
I don't believe you did. We just hit like scramble mode and it's like, all right, I guess we'll just kind of go with it. And you have no props to go. You did it intentional, but you had no props. You're just going to
assume that I don't have props?
I don't know. Don't you have like a bear?
There's a box.
Something? That's not a prop. That's just literally.
Can you see these beads? You probably can't see these beads because they're green. Prop.
Now this is the world's worst Carrot Top impression ever. Whatever you have in your stash over there. What's up, Grant? Happy Monday. It's a lot going down in the association. Tons of body parts. We're going to talk about in a second. Qualifier. The 7 o'clock is not that is tip off for some games. A bunch of games actually going down at 7. We're almost 3 hours out. Shenanigans will go down for sure. There's a ton of dudes that are currently questionable. I'm going to run them down for the people, but we're going to do our best to position people to at least set up pivots. Of course, if you guys are RG members, you got crunch time with Andy Means tonight. It's a dual sport crunch time. Anything goes down at 6 o'clock, 6:30, whenever we're off the air. Andy's going to break it down for you guys and tell you how to adjust as far as your lineups. And I believe Cheese is good. Dave Potts talking some baseball. And you got the chief meteorologist, Kevin Roth. He's going to be on as well tonight. I think there's a ton going on weather-wise last I checked, but weather can be fickle sometimes. Hey, if you want to become an RG member, how do you do that? You get $10 off your first month. You can do that a la carte with just one sport or all the sports. Link will be dropped in chat. What up, chat? Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Do appreciate that. Fire off your questions. Devin will be compiling them. This guy or that guy questions, we're happy to field them. Tell us what site, is it FanDuel? Is it for DK? Is it for, hey, it's for SuperDraft potentially as well. And Grant, people are excited out there because the lineup HQ will function. It now supports SuperDraft, which is that your home site? I guess it's your home site, right?
Yeah, I guess. I play on there more than other places.
All right. Can you sound a little less excited?
I am so excited. I can play whoever I like. It's just like, I'm always a big fan of not having to do too much after lock, just because it starts to get exhausting. Like there's certain slates where I absolutely know that I want to take advantage of things, but like at this point where there's NBA and MLB, like I don't want to have to just be ready to change anything for either of the sports at the same time. So SuperDraft makes it easy because someone gets ruled out, and with the NBA being as fickle as it is right now, like you can just mass play. Like Porzingis gets ruled out, boom, swap over to Luka. That simple.
What if he's not playing because they're both questionable? I understand your point, but
if neither of them play, then I don't know, swap over to Buddy Hyde.
Man, we're gonna, and of course here let's run down the body parts of the people. Sure, why not? Grant, I know you were looking at one of the things that's actually I cheated as well. I looked at this function here at RG, the situation room, and good Lord, there are so many players listed that are questionable, probable, out. Let's run them down, and obviously we kind of hint.
And then the show will be over because body parts are so long and you take way too much time.
I'm not even going to give the body parts. How about that? I'm going to make a concession for the people. I'm not going to give the body parts, but just say who's in and who's out, that kind of thing. And Atlanta.
I got a way to do this. You can list the major body parts, but one at a time, and I will tell you how that affects it according to the what if functions in RG.
Wait, what? Okay, I'm going team by team. You have it listed as far as like the 10, 9, 8 as far as importance. Is that what you're talking about?
Just name the stars. Don't name every single body part that isn't really that important.
I made this list, and you're saying just a trash my list. Okay. So Trae Young is currently out. What happens when Trae Young is out, Grant?
We already assume that Trae Young, Bogdanovich is probably going to get the point guard minutes. He gets a drastic uptick in usage. Colin gets an uptick in usage, but that's stuff we already know. That's stuff we've known this entire time. Like this is not new. This is not new news. I'm talking about new news. The questionables, the what ifs that are going to happen later on. I mean, you can talk about all the guys that are out. You want to talk about how it is when LeBron James is out? No, we've known about that.
He's out today?
He is. I believe he is. He definitely is.
Well, Anthony Davis on Yahoo is a really good play. Yahoo has not adjusted his price. He's like $22 over there. If you guys are playing Yahoo tonight, Anthony Davis, really, really strong play. Don't play him anywhere else. But I don't know what his price is on SuperDraft. You probably would know. I don't. Other places have not adjusted. Of course,
I think it's still like 1.05. I think they just never adjusted it.
Can't play him. So like you could do it by teams as well too. And if you want to do it that way, Grant, because like Philadelphia, we got Embiid, Simmons, Tobias Harris, Danny Green, and Furkan Korkmaz all questionable. And we really can't go through every possible scenario. But, you know, suffice to say, an easy way, the more body parts that are out when that goes down, and I believe in Doc Rivers is not going to give us any clarity anytime soon, just the way he's been throughout the season. But that is a 7 o'clock game. Theoretically, we will know what's going down there before tip at least. But like, do you have a thought on like what you do with that? Because if they're all playing, then nobody's really sexy. If, of course, OKC has been bleeding fantasy points of late. They're without Lou Dort as well too. But if you get the combination of like Embiid and Simmons out and Harris in, Harris becomes a fabulous play, especially against OKC. But what sort of analysis can we give on these 5 guys that are currently questionable? I don't know.
Well, there's the isolation incidents, which are just basically if this person's out, this person gets a huge bump no matter what. Like, so biggest example is Embiid. If Embiid is out, Dwight Howard gets a massive bump. Scott gets a massive bump, but probably not going to be worth it. But Embiid being out, Dwight Howard will in all likelihood get the start or at least play a significant amount of minutes. It's a good matchup going up against OKC, who's been the worst defensive team over the last 10 games and one of the faster paced teams. They give up a ton of points. I think they're the best fantasy matchup in any game where it ends up staying close. But in isolation, Embiid being out, huge uptick to Dwight Howard. Everyone else gets a significant uptick. Like Simmons, we currently have an 18% uptick in fantasy points. If Embiid is ruled out, Seth Curry, 22%. Danny Green, 17%, Harris, 13%. So it gives an uptick to everyone, but the drastic uptick is Dwight Howard. Now, if Simmons is ruled out, then Maxey gets an uptick, but that's irrelevant because he's still only projected for about 4 minutes. Like Mike Scott gets a little uptick. George Hill,
roster Mike Scott this league.
Yeah, George Hill gets an uptick, not extensive. Korkmaz, who I think is still questionable, gets an uptick, but still doesn't become in play. The only ones that are actually viable options are guys potentially Seth Curry, depending on what stuff ends up opening up. I'm probably not going to play him regardless. Shake Milton gets an uptick, probably not going to play him regardless. Harris does get enough of an uptick where he does kind of come into play on certain sites. Not much, but he's definitely in play. And Embiid gets a little bit of an uptick, but he's already in play. Now, if Embiid and Simmons are out, Harris, massive uptick. Everyone, massive uptick. Specifically, Dwight Howard, Harris become fantastic plays. And then everyone else in the offense, we have a, 40% drop in usage or 45, 50% drop in usage between Simmons and Embiid not playing. So it opens up stuff for everything. You have to think about the guys that's going to concentrate on. And specifically, it's going to concentrate on Harris. But everyone kind of gets an uptick in not only minutes, but also in usage. So everyone becomes in play. So you have to wait and see what the starting lineup is. If Korkmaz is in there, then he potentially is in play with both those guys out. If he's not, then everyone who's in the starting lineup likely gets a huge uptick, but Harris becomes the main target to go with.
It is an island game for Philadelphia for what it's worth. They did not play yesterday, not playing it tomorrow. Front end of back-to-backs. This to me, especially this time of year, is super noteworthy. OKC on the front end, Toronto as well, Minnesota, Dallas, which is really interesting. I think they have tomorrow night. They have an ESPN game or a TNT game. Means he was talking about a game that seems more important, which again, that is a 10 o'clock game that we're probably not going to have clarity until in the middle of the slate. And maybe set up your lineups under some sort of if-thens or give yourself some swapping options, multiple swapping options, maybe a 2v2 or a 3v3.
The nice part about that is you look at the players in it. So I assume that we'll get news prior to 9 o'clock Eastern time. Is that
we should?
Yeah, that's a fairly safe assumption to make. So assuming that we get news prior to that, you can make all sorts of different pivots. So Halliburton is one of the best plays on the slate, likely be very highly owned. You basically are playing him. That's not going to change too much, but having that piece in there gives you a significant amount of things to change. But the main thing is Luka keep them in a spot where you can keep in the utility spot, or actually you don't even need to, because you can swap Porzingis over to Jokic and Luka down to like MPJ. Like, assuming Porzingis and Luka are both out, then that just means that you have to have a few other guys that are in play. Like, you can swap over to Jokic, you can swap over to Porter. Like, those are the direct swaps to both those guys, considering that you can play Luka at small forward or forward, and you can swap him over to Porter. You can play Porzingis at center, swap him over to Jokic. That's an easy 2v2 swap if you really have to change things up. Now, there's a whole lot of other things that come into play. Obviously, if Luka and Porzingis are out, like, Brunson becomes a fantastic play. It's going up against Sacramento. Sacramento is a very bad defensive team, and on top of that, they are playing at a pretty decent pace. I think number 6 in the league over the last 10, 15 games since the All-Star break, pretty much. So if both of them are out, then everything opens up. Hardaway, Brunson, all these guys. So you can have some cheaper guys that you may be able to pivot off of depending on when the news ends up coming out. But know that, like, worst case scenario, both those guys get ruled out. The absolute worst thing that can happen to you if you have both those guys in your lineup is you swap over Joker and MPJ, because it's an easy swap over. Now, if Luka is ruled out and Porzingis is playing, Porzingis becomes a fantastic play. He gets a 21% increase in, according to RPG projections, in total fantasy points. Have him pegged around 50 points on DK and FanDuel, which at this price tag makes him a fantastic play. Brunson's the interesting one because Brunson is likely going to be super chalk, and it's hard to figure out how to get in there. Like, one way that you can do it is kind of make lineups that you think this is going to happen, knowing that you can swap over to stuff. So Brunson's sitting there at 4.7K. You can always swap over to THJ, who's still not going to be a great play. You can swap over to Campazzo if you really want to, who's not a great play, but definitely worse. You can go up to PJ Dozier. Like, not great plays, but they're all good enough plays where you're not sacrificing too much. And as long as you have the ability to swap over to them, you're not getting a zero. You're not completely screwing over your lineups. Like, any number of things can happen. So it works nicely with Porzingis being about $500 more than MPJ, because you can 2v2 swap from Porzingis and Brunson over to MPJ and PJ Dozier. Like, it's almost an exact salary swap. So obviously you have to kind of plan out your positional eligibility, either having Porzingis in the forward spot or having Brunson in the guard spot or the shooting guard spot. But you can easily make it happen over on DK. So you kind of have to plan for these things when the most important news on the slate is the last game on the slate, and you have 4 to 5 different possibilities of things happening. Wait, 1, 2.
Well,
3,
no, the other part of that, Grant, not to cut you off here, you're on a roll, but like we talked about the two main pieces, Porzingis is questionable. Doncic's got that elbow, so he's questionable too. And it's a legit, he played through it, but it's legit. It's for real. It's not like they're just kind of making stuff up. And Dallas is still jockeying for position. If you listen to Luka and TNT the other night after they won the game, they really want to get out of that 7 spot, and they did. They're currently right above Portland, and that, that the playing game, the setup as far as 7 through 10, have to do these shenanigans to get into the playoffs. It really makes these teams that earn the 6 and 7 spot want to play hard. And again, it is the front half of back-to-back. But the other part of it there, Grant, Porzingis is questionable, Luka's questionable, DFS is questionable, Maxi Kleber is questionable, and Josh Richardson is questionable. And if all 4 or 4 or 5 of those guys are out, Dallas can be just like an amazing play across the board. And Tim Hardaway, THJ can crush because he's just the last man standing. He's talking about Brunson as well too. And again, when will we have this clarity? Who knows? You talk about that Memphis-Denver game at 9:00. Before that, it's 8:00 gap. So after 8:00 on an 11-game slate, after 8:00, only 2 games are left in play, which this is more important to me than figuring out, well, what's this guy's usage and like that. This is more important than anything else. The matchups, this is just figuring this information out and just maybe taking a stand. And it's a good time to MME and just figuring out different paths. And you don't really want to end up eating 5 or 10,000 in salary if you have Luka and if you have Porzingis. And NBA, it's different than baseball. Baseball, you get the salary, who really cares? But you would have loved to have spent it earlier on, hey, if Westbrook does play, we'll see on that. Stay tuned for that one. You had something else to say before I run down the rest of the body parts.
I can't remember what it was, but something interesting to say is SuperDraft, like, this makes it a way more viable thing because you can 1v1 swap on everyone. Like, like I said, you can just Luka gets ruled out. You can swap over to Brunson. You can swap over to Porzingis, depending on positional eligibility. Porzingis gets ruled out. You can swap over to MPJ. You can swap over to Jokic. But also, you can direct 1v1 swap from Luka to Brunson. And Brunson's sitting there, 1.6x multiplier. So I don't know if he's still going to be a great play, but he's definitely viable and offers a bit of a ceiling in tournaments if Luka's out, because you're kind of shooting for 65 plus points. It's what you're shooting for in tournaments. So it gives you a good option, and it potentially could be a great option, kind of depending what ends up happening, because both Porzingis and Luka are ruled out. You mass swap over to Brunson, probably swap a decent amount over to Hardaway, and then you can swap any center eligibility that you have for Porzingis over to Jokic.
Yeah, so again, Dallas, Porzingis, Luka, Richardson, DFS, Kleber, all currently questionable. We talk about Philadelphia, Embiid, Simmons, Harris, Green, Furkan Korkmaz, all currently questionable. Trae Young is going to be out for a while. Chris Dunn apparently is available to play. I think this will be his first game he's played all season. I can't imagine he plays a ton of minutes or many minutes or enough. He's 3.2K. I don't think he would go out there and throw him for 25 minutes, but they do. If he gets something on that, he can become kind of sort of somewhat interesting. Dennis Schroeder is questionable with his calf right now. Kawhi is out. They're also resting Luke Kennard. Rondo is questionable with his wrist. Oh, I'm mentioning body parts. I'll just say in or out. Beverly is still out. Westbrook on the back half. He's questionable. Hachimura expected to play with his knee. And Robin Lopez is questionable, which doesn't seem like anything interesting. But if he doesn't play, I don't want to say solidify Gafford, but it makes Gafford a more appealing play. And he's a cheapie that, he's been done really well in the moments that they've been giving him. And the minutes have been volatile like all the time for the centers there for Washington, but you catch him on the right night. He's pretty interesting. Cleveland, we got Sexton out. Larry Nance is out. Dellavedova is out. Prince, I think, is out for the season. And Hartenstein's not playing. And Steven Adams is questionable with his toe, and that one doesn't seem like a big deal, but it may, because Guillermo Hernan Gomez can be kind of sort of somewhat interesting if he draws the start. Or Jackson, if he draws the start, one of those two guys could be interesting there as a cheapie. Lou Dort is out with his hip, and Tony Bradley is questionable for Miami, missing a couple guards, though questionable. Kendrick Nunn and Hero is questionable. Both those guys questionable. Iguodala is out with his old hip. Gary Trent's not playing basketball for Toronto. They're also going to be without Boucher. Denver, another injury for Denver. They are super thin. You alluded to some of the cheapies there, Facu Campazzo, as well as Dozier. Their minutes are pretty solidified because who else is going to play? They lost Barton. He's going to be out with his hamstring, and Monte Morris is still out too. Bunch of dudes on Orlando are doubtful. MCW, it's Michael Carter Williams, Ross, Ennis, Otto Porter. And then, Josh Jackson. This is an island game for Detroit, and they've been doing some goofy things, but on back-to-backs and front ends and back ends, and I assume most of the Detroit guys will be available to play. They're still doing their best to lose. They don't want to win basketball games. I think they've lost 3 in a row, I suppose. And I check the standings this time of year. It's super important for me. Zach LaVine is still out. De'Aaron Fox is still out, which makes Halliburton a really solid play for Sacramento. Donovan Mitchell, of course, still out. For the Spurs, Rudy Gay is questionable, along with Lonnie Walker. And so I think this is bad chalk. You tell me, because this is kind of popping right now in apples as far as Phoenix versus New York. Jay Crowder is out with his ankle. Dario Saric is going to rest, which has Cam Johnson popping for us to some degree, and Craig. And neither one of those guys excite me, especially when they're 3-point dependent. And I'm fairly certain, I meant to check this, but the Knicks subdue threes, I think, like the best in the league the last I checked. Is that good chalk or bad chalk? And it's absolutely can change once guys are ruled out and they get to the back of the line.
It absolutely will change.
Yeah. But right now, as it stands, they are popping. But I don't want to play them. In my mind, I don't want to play them.
Then don't. You don't have to. We know things are going to open up just based on probability. There's 27 questionable players, with a significant amount of them having direct pivots become viable if that happens. I mean, obviously we have Jetty and we have Civi. Both of them are guys that are very cheap and popping and optimizers, but there's going to be other guys that open up. You can basically just cram in Jetty, cram in Civi, and hope for another one. Know that another one's probably going to end up
Who's
passing.
the second one? Are you saying Svi? Is that what you're trying to say? What are you saying there?
Civi.
Who is Sevi? What's there a person?
There's so many ones that are just stuck. I obviously can't say anything but Buddy Hyde. There's some that I can't ever get their name right. And
you gotta pay for Hyde though. And like I know you're just kind of saying like guys, if for whatever reason you say wrong, and I blame Chopper for that. Head Chopper got that started. It's Buddy Hield, of course. He's expensive, but like, he's gotta, if that game's gonna stay close, it's probably gonna be because he's thriving. We saw Holmes come back last night.
FY Gene, pack drop.
Oh, what time?
You join the drop right now. Everyone, NBA stress test, hop in.
I missed out on the last one. It was
I
even
know, I was
announced in the
watching a show and I got a pack, you idiot.
Oh, I was so disappointed. I was so mad at myself. Let's see. All right, we'll join the drop in just a second. Devin's going to be joining us the last 15 minutes of the show, give or take. That's not on us just yet, obviously, but he wants to answer, ask questions on behalf of the chat. What up, chat? You join us late. Do subscribe, turn on notifications, ask us some questions. We'll do our best to answer. A lot of it just kind of sort of up in the air because, again, what'd you mention? 27 guys are currently questionable. I didn't count them.
If you want, we can always drop into that early, and I can give more, because honestly, our analysis of the slate is really not going to be that great right now. So we can hop in early and we can give more. Like if Devin, any like real pertinent ones, I'll be checking in chat too that pop up throughout the show. We can just actually dissect it because it has more than one just easy, simple answer. A lot of it has a lot more analysis to go into it. And so, guys, any situations that you really want to have us go into depth on and see if it affects another player, go ahead and drop those into chat. And we might actually get to a few of them throughout the show and save the rest for later if they require a whole lot of analysis. No, whatever. I was trying not to swear on that. I was trying to think of another word.
When Devin talks in our ear, the people can't hear that. That's just him talking to us. So you didn't necessarily have to respond to that.
I know, but it's an automatic reaction.
I understand. I just pulled it up on the fly, by the way. New York is 9th best at subduing threes. I guess they've kind of fallen back, or I just kind of made it up in my head. They were different.
Is it 9th best at just total amount of threes, or is it 9th best
made threes?
Yeah, so you have to look at things like that. You have to look at shooting percentage because one of the biggest things is pace. So obviously higher pace teams, especially where they're just a lot of fast break stuff, going to be drastically different. So looking at 9th overall best at subduing threes made has a large amount to do with the fact that they have on average 15%.
Do you know who the best is at subduing threes percentage wise?
Trying to think.
There's a reason why I brought this up. It's all going to now. It all makes sense because it's New York.
Phoenix.
No, it's New York. That's the whole point I was making. Is like I don't want to roster Cam Johnson, a dude that relies on threes to face a team in New York that subdues threes. Now, to your point, they're at 33.7%. They hold teams down the best defensively. Also, they play at a slow pace as well too. So, and that's how Cam gets there. That's basically his route. Can he get there another way? Sure, I suppose, but he's essentially a 3-point bomber and nothing else. And that's why I think it's the bad chalk play. Right now, I understand why he's popping. I understand the math play and all that. Lou Williams has been ruled out. He's not feeling particularly well there.
Simmons is likely to play.
Oh, I didn't see that one. Simmons
popped while you were on a large tangent about injuries because even though we said we weren't going to read him, you read him.
Well, let me ask you this: if you're in the media and like Doc's like, yeah, actually he's going to give it a go. Simmons good. Is there no follow-up question? Hey, what about the other 9 guys that are questionable? Why do we only get one report, like on one guy? No follow-up questions, Grant?
I mean, he probably did. He probably just said, I don't know. Nothing's changed.
What was the line he used last week? The many guys are on the verge of playing or not playing or something like that, which is really super helpful. We do appreciate that. Hey, let's assume like all the studs are playing. Let's assume Westbrook's playing. Who is your big spend priority? How about that? Like Zion, Randall, it's Jokic, right?
Yeah, I mean it's Jokic. Jokic has just been on an incredible tear without Murray in there. He's just almost foolproof outside of 1-2 random games. Even in blowouts, he tends to end up getting there. It's at a 4-point spread, which the biggest thing we worry about is if he's going to get a full complement of minutes, and he's going to likely in this game because he's going to stay close. Westbrook would probably be number 2. What Westbrook is doing right now is just absolutely ridiculous. Just a walking triple-double every single game. Like these guys that are going to get you 60 points with a legit chance at like 80 in any single game. Because
he
we
only
look at
got
the rest
40
of the
last night, though. He busted.
Huh?
People are probably angry that he busted yesterday.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, we look at our floor ceiling percentages. It's going to happen once every 10 or once every 5 games where Westbrook's going to end up at around 41 points. And it could be for any number of situations, foul trouble, blowout, or just having an off game, or just letting Beal or someone else go. But Westbrook predominantly is going to end up around the 60-point range. Same thing
do
with
we
Joe.
care? I said Lou Williams is out, not to cut you off, but Lou Williams being out, Dunn is back. I have no idea how many minutes he's going to play, but he is super cheap on DK. They're without Trae Young, obviously. They still have Herter. They have Bogdanovich. They have Goodwin. They can run out there. Do we care as far as the Atlanta? Does that move the needle for you as far as Lou Williams being out?
I mean, not a ton. Like probably a little bit of an uptick to Goodwin, a little bit of uptick to Dunn, who even at near min price is probably not going to be in my player pool. A little bit of an uptick to Bogdanovich. But it doesn't drastically move the needle on anyone. And a lot of those guys weren't really fantastic plays to begin with. I mean, I don't think I had a single one of these guys as being a core in any of my lineups. I mean, you can definitely use any of these guys. They all have a possibility of going off. And without Lou Williams in there, just gives an uptick to minutes for a few guys. Yes, he eats up a lot of usage coming off the bench, but he is a guy that's only accounting for 20 to 25 minutes a game in most of the time. So it does give an uptick in minutes, but they may just give a lot of that to Dunn, a lot of that to Goodwin, who's neither of which are really that great of plays. And so it doesn't affect it. Like the direct correlation is not really enough to get any of these guys into the player pool, in my opinion, but I could be wrong. I mean, do you have any interest in any Atlanta players?
I would love to hear a report as far as Dunn, but I think last I checked, we had him projected for like 4 minutes. I don't know where that number is coming from. I didn't see a report as far as a coach talking about it. And again, he hasn't played a minute for this team. He was a free agent. I think he was a free agent out of Chicago. Why did he play for Chicago? But I don't remember how they acquired him. I think he was a free agent. But I wouldn't think they would push him too hard. But Atlanta is jockeying for position as far as, in the playoffs, and they're on the bubble of falling back to the 7. I think they do, for the record. I think there's a decent chance that Boston and Miami both pass them by. Wouldn't surprise me. And by the way, as far as the studs, theoretically, you would think the Clippers would want to win. They're jockeying with Utah and Phoenix for that, 1 through 3. Denver's on their tail, but I think Denver's going to fall back a little bit with their injuries. So I got to think the Clippers think worst case scenario, they're the 3 spot. I don't know how much they care about that stuff. But no Kawhi, Paul George. We got to talk about Paul George. He's been in good form, and they're on an island game. And we've seen shenanigans, of course, as the guy's getting ill out of nowhere, just late scratches out of nowhere. Morris several times, George several times. But a matchup here against New Orleans, as far as the studs, Jokic, Westbrook, and George, those are the 3 most appealing studs for me. Well, what are your thoughts as far as Paul George?
Yeah, no, exactly the same. If you want to pivot a little bit, because all those guys are likely to be around 25-30% owned. I think the pivot is over to Randall. I mean, Randall has been putting up ridiculous games recently. I mean, he's been over 60 in 3 of the last 5 games. He can crush. He's going to probably play 40 minutes. I know it's not a great matchup versus Phoenix, but that's largely going to depress his ownership. And realistically, he's a guy that's been getting there in slow-paced matchups because New York always plays at a slow pace. So it's not going to fully affect him, and he's been taking a ton of shots. I mean, 2 random games he had less than 20, but outside of that, he's been averaging around 25 to 28 in every single game. So he's a guy that's going to get there in all likelihood. I think his points total, projected points total over in Vegas is 27.5 is the over-under. I think there's heavier juice on the over. But yeah, Randall is the potential tournament pivot. And obviously Embiid, if he plays, especially if Tobias Harris isn't in there, he could potentially come to the mold because he can put up a massive outing. It's all about if that game's going to end up staying close. And generally you want to make a bring back if you think that the game is going to stay close, but really not a ton of stuff that I want to play over on OKC, even with all the injuries. I mean, I guess you can go with Svi, but that's it. Like, not really anyone. Malden's a little bit too expensive. Roby, everyone else is not going to get their minutes. So it makes it a little bit interesting because you can't get bringbacks. But even if this game does stay close, there's a pretty decent chance that none of the guys over on OKC are a requirement for tournaments.
Yeah, and you mentioned Randall, and it's like you said, it's not this greatest matchup in the world, but there's a certain value. He comes with a value of like this time of year, especially. You're right. If Tibbs has had his druthers, if this game is close, if he dodges foul trouble, no wonkiness, he's going to play 38, 39, 40, 41 minutes. New York has won 9 straight. The Nick fandom on Twitter, they're very, very excited. If you look at the teams they beat, not very good for what it's worth, if you care about that kind of stuff. But Washington, shout out to Washington. They're currently, they won 8 games in a row. They have not won in 8 games in a row since Michael Jordan played for the Wizards, the second greatest player of all time. So, I mean, it's been, 20 years or something like that. That's absolutely incredible. Yeah. So, hey, I do want you to mention, we were talking about Lineup HQ. We were talking about how Lineup HQ did add SuperDraft. Grant, you prepped for the people. You gave the people some winners for SuperDraft. And hey, if you want to play on SuperDraft, use the promo code Grinders. That's GRINDERS for a $50 instant deposit bonus alongside the $500 deposit match bonus. Grant, I know, again, it's hard to do at this time, day, goofy things change. But as of right now, who are the plays you like on SuperDraft?
So SuperDraft is a little bit easier this time of the day. Yes, there will be guys at high multipliers, but you can essentially get your core in there. So the core is very obviously at center. It's Jokic. Jokic is 1.05x multiplier. Very clearly the top center option, even if certain things end up happening. I don't foresee anyone outside of Porzingis who can also play it at forward being a guy that you want to replace Jokic with. I mean, ownership's obviously a thing, but Jokic is the main guy there. And then it's Paul George, 1.2x multiplier, lock and load. Like,
that's
obviously,
good.
yeah. Julius Randle, 1.2x multiplier, lock and load. And then Halliburton, no matter what, a 1.4x multiplier is going to be one of the best plays on the entire slate. Just because without Fox in there, if that game ends up staying close, it's a solid matchup versus Dallas. He's going to end up getting there. He's at worst probably going to get you 35 points, which at 1.4x multiplier is going to be close to 50, and has a legit shot at getting 50 points pre-multiplier, which 50 points at 1.4x multiplier will be 70. So the range of outcomes, he's not going to kill you in most things, and he's likely to help you take down the tournament, even at high ownership.
Look at the big brain on Grant showing off hey, I'm a former accountant. I can do math in my head. Yeah. So, hey, we had a question of the day. We're going to ask Devin when he comes on a second too. And the chat can participate too. Grant, who is America's sweetheart? You can't say yourself. Who is America's sweetheart?
I mean, really it's Dan DeVito, but if you look at it through the decades, it went Julia Roberts into Sandra Bullock, probably into Reese Witherspoon, into Jennifer Lawrence. There was a gap in there where it was a rotating category.
I think I said Aniston.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston was definitely part of that for a short period of time. But yeah, like right now, I don't know who it is right now. Who do you think it is right now?
Anna Kendrick.
You might have been right 3 years ago for a 6-month period of time.
What? The window closed already?
Yeah, the window's closed. Like, she was up in the debate, but I'm talking about longevity. Out of the last,
she's got longevity.
I mean,
how do you define America's sweetheart? Because you gotta be like, I think, charming and likable, right?
So it's kind of like saying LeBron. Like, it's talking about who the best player in the league is. Like, yes, obviously different players end up going for MVP different years. You could say Steph, you could say this, you could say that, but realistically, it's the longevity, the 6, 7, 8 year span where you say like, oh, this was the top player in the NBA.
Well, I mean, LeBron's just going to be the greatest ever for a long time, but that's a whole other conversation, I suppose.
He is America's sweetheart.
Yeah, the chat's going to participate. I'm sure we got them riled up to some degree. Devin is compiling questions in the chat. If you guys want to fire up some questions regarding the slate, just tell us, is it for cash? Is it for tournaments? Is it for SuperDraft? Is it for DK? Is it for FanDuel? We'll do our best to answer those questions. I'll bring Devin on in just a couple minutes or so. Is there anything you're just crossing out? 11 game slate? What are we just not playing? Like, no, it's just, I'm pretending that game's not even happening.
I mean, I'm looking through. Atlanta, Detroit's probably number 1. Lakers, Orlando is probably number 2 for just the full-on fade. OKC, Philly kind of depends on things, but there's going to be someone in play. Cleveland, Toronto, like, I don't really want most of it outside of Garland and Jetty. Phoenix, New York, really nothing interesting there outside of Randall's with tournament pivot. Chicago, Miami kind of depends on injury news, but predominantly a game that I'm fading. Clippers, New Orleans, it's mostly Paul George. Utah, Minnesota, game mostly fading. So yeah, like it's most of the games that I'm just kind of out on, depending on the site, depending on a bunch of things. But like a lot of our interest is going to be in the last 2 games, Westbrook and then cheap plays. Like that's kind of how the slate's going. I mean, we look at projected ownership as of right now.
Well, it depends when you're shopping. Not to cut you off, but like you thought about Cleveland, Jetty Osman, we presume he's going to start again and play, 30-ish minutes or so. He's still a minimum on FanDuel because, they played yesterday and he hadn't played in the last, 5 or 6 games. He was a DNP CD. And now all of a sudden he's starting because everybody's out. And, 3.5K, it's a no-brainer. Jared Allen went nuts yesterday and he's back at his price went down. He's 5.7. This is FanDuel specific now. I believe he's 7K on DK, 5.7 on FanDuel. So it's kind of a decision point. And I know we love Jokic, but if Jokic puts up 60 and, Allen puts up 46 or 42, Allen's probably the better play, assuming you're delegating those funds elsewhere and making the best of him. Assuming guys like, a Westbrook is playing here, that you get yourself Paul George. Of course, you can get Paul George and Jokic because there's a lot of cheapies out there that are all around. But finish your thought. We're going to bring Devin up.
What was my thought?
Okay. So I just noticed if I cut you off, you just lose whatever.
Well, no, it was basically the end of the thought. Like,
oh, okay.
I've said I'm largely crossing off whole games, just kind of pricing dependent and site dependent. You said, well, let me cut you off there. It depends on the site and price.
Well, I just thought it was important because you kind of not wave Cleveland.
Did you join the drop, by the way?
I did. Thank you. Did you nail the CAPTCHA on the first? I never get that the first time around. It's like, oh, that's a bus. Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah. I'm not a robot though. They confirmed I'm not a robot. I'm a human.
Debatable.
Yeah.
You'd be a poorly built robot. Might need a processor up there.
The best dollar for dollar plays on FanDuel is 2 guys from Cleveland, currently Jetty Osman. Again, he's 3.5K, and then Jared Allen is 5.7K. We're projecting for 38 fantasy points, but again, just one center you can roster on FanDuel, and raw points matter. And Jokic is a center, and Embiid is a center if he's like the only guy that plays. Stay tuned as far as Philadelphia. Devin, we're bringing you on. We gave you like 5 minutes, so you have to have a good answer. Who's America's sweetheart?
Well, it's interesting because your question, for one, there's like a regional aspect, it seems, right?
Oh boy.
Because my first thought was Dolly Parton, right? But I fully understand that that's my narrative from Nashville that I've been fed. So it's hard to really differentiate. But I mean, that's really been my first guess, right?
That's Tennessee's sweetheart.
Sure.
Though.
Yeah, but
America's sweetheart. I mean, who's an underdog right now? But
Betty White.
Kind of, huh?
An underdog.
Betty White's always America's sweetheart, but Gal Gadot.
Well, I mean,
we're getting.
Does America's sweetheart have to be American born? I don't know what the rules are.
No.
Oh my gosh, Dean.
I'm just asking. I'm not saying
to get technical.
No,
you didn't say American sweetheart.
He's not running for president.
America's sweetheart.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not trying to make her ineligible. I wish her the best of luck.
Oh, geez. All right. Well,
Kevin,
we got a couple of questions. Yeah, we'll see if we can knock some out and see if anybody else wants to drop some more in there. Don't forget, hit that like button if we get your question. Pete would like to know, does having Trae Young and Lou Will out make Collins and Bogdan more viable in tournaments?
More viable, still not very viable.
All right. Salvatore wants to know if Dean didn't like that answer.
Well, I just don't know what to do in Atlanta because in theory, they're supposed to try. They're trying to win.
Yeah.
And not theory. In actuality, they're playing Detroit, and they're priced up.
Yeah.
In theory, they're trying to win.
Yeah. Well, like Capella, how do you play him at 9.6? Like, how do you do that? How do you justify that? Bogdan, there's definitely some sticker shock, but he's gonna run the show for 35 minutes or so. But there's no discount in that. He's just fine. So yeah, go ahead. I don't think I'm interested. And we have 14 minutes for what it's worth currently projected for Chris Dunn. That changed with Lou Will going out. Still not enough, I don't think. But and they're probably guessing, unless there's been a report. Who knows how many minutes he's going to play.
Salvatore wants to know, FanDuel tournament, PG-13 or Michael Porter?
Still probably PG.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're planning on potentially making some swaps with the Dallas situation.
Morningwood would like to know if you guys have any DK tournament locks of the night.
Give
right now it's
locks,
probably
Grant.
Jetty.
You seem pretty high on Randall as well.
I mean, I'm high on. He's the tournament pivot.
Sure.
Like from the top price guys, he's going to be the top price guy with right up with the other guys. So it's the largest ceiling and drastically less ownership.
I mean,
you know who's been like awesome, but we don't know how many minutes he's going to play because they want to lose is Mason Plumlee. But like it is an island game. I wouldn't imagine he's resting tonight. He's been crushing the last few games, and he's pretty cheap as well too. I think he was one of the reasons why Squirrel Patrol, shout out Squirrel Patrol here, does content at
crushed.
RG, won the FanDuel contest over the weekend. He won first place, which was $500,000, and second place, which was $200,000. So, and Grant knows Squirrel Patrol. He's a moocher. I think Grant has used them to get to some live finals before. Is that correct, Grant?
Lovingly.
Well, I mean, he wants to keep me around because I was there the first live final he won.
Oh, you're like a good luck charm?
Yeah.
The rabbit arm for Squirrel Patrol.
You're his hype man, like his own personal like Flavor Flav or something
Devin,
like that.
Rabbits don't have arms.
I guess leg, technically, yeah.
Rabbit's foot, the commonly known rabbit's foot.
Yeah. Donnie wants to know, DK tournament, single entry. Any interest in Jakob Podol, 1% versus Washington?
It's not terrible. Washington is obviously just horrible versus centers. Like should be a close game. Like he's a point per minute producer, and so you never really expect too much. But the matchup makes him definitely on the board. I don't think he's going to draw any ownership. So yeah, he's definitely in play. Like this could be one of the spots where he puts up 50.
All right, Donnie wants to know again, DK, if Russell Westbrook's out, who's better, Beal or PG-13?
I'd probably go with Beal.
Yeah, I don't. I think Beal really wants to get that scoring title. Like I think he cares about that. It's just sort of watching. I think it's him and who's he tied with the scoring title? They're kind of jockeying back and forth. Why am I losing the name? You know who it is, Grant? I'm just
looking it up.
Yeah, is there somebody he's really close with? Is it Curry? Maybe it's Curry.
I think it is Curry.
Yeah. I think he wants to win that scoring title for whatever it's worth. But like Beal is, he has to score 30 real life points, and he probably will if Westbrook doesn't play. The San Antonio side, we're supposed to like players, that play against Washington, but they're basically fully healthy. A couple questionable guys in Gay and Walker, not key pieces, and everybody else is like market price. They're priced what they should be, and that's kind of the thing with Pirtle. It's not this great price, but it's a perfectly fine matchup. White, we saw him crush the other day, but that was with several dudes being out. Are we just ignoring the Spurs, and is that a mistake?
Not really on an 11-game slate with 27 questionable tags.
Yeah, and stay tuned. Have we got any news, or I guess not just yet, huh?
Nothing yet. Still keeping an eye out, though. Let's see. Morningwood wants to know, a DK at 6.8K, doesn't Halliburton need to score at least 40? Seems like that's not a given.
It's not a given, but nothing's ever a given. He has the most likely chance at that price range to score over 40 by a pretty decent margin. I mean, you look at everyone else, like, Jared Allen's in that range. He could. Ingles is in that range. He could. White's in that range. He'd probably be the better tournament pivot. But Halliburton is by far the most likely because if that game stays close, he's going to play close to 40 minutes. And just being a point per minute producer without Fox on the floor makes it a likely scenario. He'll
see a significant usage bump. And for what it's worth, our lineup HQ tool here on DK specifically, he's projected for precisely 40.02 fantasy points. And Jason Tatum's not playing basketball tomorrow. Neither is Kemba Walker. That's not helpful. This is daily fantasy sports. All we care about is today and today only. We'll check back with the Celtics tomorrow, but thanks for that.
I was like, did we just get that?
Yeah, that just broke, yeah.
Why? All right. Kemper wants to know, any locks or guys y'all have interest in for the late slate?
What is the late slate? It's probably the last two games.
Yeah, if it's the last two games, no, there's no, like, Jokic is a lock, but he becomes less of a lock if Porzingis is in there and Luka isn't. Brunson's a lock if Luka ends up getting ruled out. If both those guys are in, but maybe Kleber and other guys miss, you could have other locks. Like, it's when you have Dallas with a lot of guys being questionable, there's no lock. So if you want a lock that's not going to change, it's Halliburton.
Well, you spent a good bit of time at the beginning of the episode too, kind of breaking down some if-then statements for the late slate, really. So if they want that, you can go back. There's a lot of plays you can pivot off of for all the questionable people.
12K in line.
Oh, boo. The tricky thing is, the rich get richer. The tricky thing is like, I'm probably already going to have Jokic. So if I already have Jokic, then now what do I do? And Porter's got a ridiculous price, but like, he should be okay from a raw points perspective. Yeah. Halliburton, by the way, better play on FanDuel than he is on DK. Playable both places, but I think it's 6-1 on FanDuel and like 6-8 or 6-9.
Also, Dean, you got a legendary pack.
Yeah, I have.
What do you mean the rich?
You're never going to live this down.
Oh, 81,000. Get out of here.
Yeah, you deserve that.
What'd you get, Devin?
47,000. It looks like.
Look at you!
Ooh, right on the
by a nose. By a nose.
All right.
Good job, guys.
Derek wants to know, any Kings worth playing tonight on a back-to-back with no Fox? I think we touched on
Halliburton.
that with a good bit with Halliburton, right? Or any other people?
Yeah.
Be cautious of Holmes. He played 22 minutes last night. He was on a minutes limit last night. 20 minutes. He played 2 over. But I don't know if he's going to play. I assume he's going to play because I've heard nothing else. But a lot of times you don't hear information.
But he's
on
probably not going to get a ton of minutes. I don't know if he's in play at all.
Yeah. I'm just be cautious of him if you're considering him. And of course, if he doesn't play, I don't know. Whiteside becomes a little bit interesting.
I feel like I've heard that.
I think
before.
you can play Buddy Hyde over on FanDuel.
What do you think of that Buddy Hield price though? On DK, Buddy Hield.
He's too expensive, yeah. But on FanDuel, he's 6'6". Like, it's not the worst idea in the world, especially if you're potentially pivoting over to some stuff in the Dallas game.
Yeah, 7-4. It just seems like a ridiculous price. Then again, a lot's going to be asked of him tonight. He's going to play a lot of minutes, but it's all sort of baked in and then some. Go ahead, Devin.
Let's see. Moving on to Michaels wants to know any insight into Cleveland's bigs. No Hartenstein and no Nance, and back-to-back for Kevin Love.
Yeah. What's the incentive to run Love into the ground? But far as we know, Love is a go. He's going to play tonight. Obviously we talked about Osman being their best dollar for dollar play, just the way he's projected right now. And Allen specifically in FanDuel is really well positioned. Garland is playable too. And there's, again, probably some sticker shock at 7.6K, but that's FanDuel specific. And I think he's 7.5 on DK, which is playable. We have Love projected at 28 minutes. And I think that's a reasonable number. I'm not going to argue with that. What are we doing here, Grant, as far as Cleveland, especially the bigs? Do we care?
Allen over on DK.
You mean
I probably don't want to play. Allen over on FanDuel. I probably don't want to play him on DK.
All right. Good chats. Big gulps, huh?
You asked for my thoughts. Like, it's pretty much it with the bigs. Like,
yeah,
it's Allen over on FanDuel.
I saw somebody in chat say, let's talk some baseball. Stay tuned because Derek Carty, CEO of the Bats, will talk some baseball as well, as well, Stevie. They said, Dean, let's talk some baseball. I want to talk baseball. I think I'm talking baseball tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I go back and forth every other day. So that'll be fun for my brain.
It's like you got baseball for the next 2 days after this.
Oh, do I? Okay, cool. Corbin Burns. Play Corbin Burns tonight. Nobody's on him. 40 strikeouts and 0 walks, and he's playing against the Marlins. Nobody's going to tell you to play Corbin Burns. Shh, keep between us.
It's
a pretty high walk rate.
About a minute left in the show. Let's get Morningwood wants to know, DK tournament, you playing any Baisley?
Not really. Like, if you want to bring it back, if you're playing Embiid based on the injuries, like, has that line moved at all, or is it still at 12.5? I think.
His fee's like the one that really pops, right?
You mean Civi?
Yes, Civi. Well, how do you pronounce his last name if you pronounce his first name?
Go ahead and give that one a try there, Grant.
Nope.
All right, look it up. Yeah, but otherwise, everybody else is kind of sort of priced where they should be because they're all going to play middle 28 minutes. Maybe Baisley might play 32, 31. Maladon, they're just priced where they should be, basically. It's hard to get excited. But they might face a ragtag group on Philadelphia. That could happen too, so stay tuned.
And we got ourselves a little strategy session clip from the DFS pregame show this morning to bring us over into the baseball show. But we'll end with this question from Eric, which is simply, QQ, go Marlins.
Well, I mean, look, that bleeds perfectly into Blender probably saying play anybody you want, and you can play the Marlins tonight. I believe you're donating, but hey, sure, I suppose. Chip in a chair with, yeah. Good luck to the Marlins against Corbin Burns, who's been absolutely ridiculous. The Marlins are still pretty terrible. Cute story. They've been a little better. Very good pitching, but they can't hit for a lick, basically. Grant, you have a thought on the Marlins?
No, don't play him.
Dynamite drop in.
The man of
summarize the slate for the people, Grant.
Wait for the Dallas news. Be prepared to edit, but realistically, you're probably playing Osman. You're probably playing Svi. You're probably paying up for Jokic and Westbrook. If Westbrook doesn't play, Beal comes in play. Halliburton's pretty much a lock and load.
We do thank you guys for watching. We did the best we could for 3 hours out for basketball and all these questionable guys and just every possible scenario. We really can't run through them. But again, if you guys are RG Premium members, You can use the Lineup HQ tool. More information comes in. You got Andy Means on Crunch Time later on tonight with Dave Potts. Jesus Good talking some baseball, two of the best in the business as far as their selective sports. Chief Meteorologist Kevin Roth is going to be all over as well too. Get yourself $10 off the first month. Links in chat for the people. Thanks for participating. Thank you for asking questions. We do like that. It makes the show more fun, especially when Grant's here. Do subscribe, turn on notifications. Stay tuned for baseball. It's Derek Carty. It's Stevie. Thank you, Devin, for producing. Screw you guys for getting a pack. Unbelievable. I never get a pack. I'm so angry.
Go open yours to feel better.
You're only as good as your last at bat. That was Grant. That was Devin. This was basketball. I was Dean. We're out of here. Holler. Hey, kids.
It's not about what's most likely to win. It's about what's more likely to win than what the field is doing. That second part is what throws people. Is that it's not, if we showed on today, we don't have slate IQ for today's slate or whatever. But if we go back to, sometimes we have slates where the top stack has like an 18% chance of winning. And it's a large enough slate where it's like 18% is a lot for, let's say the Boston on this slate was 18%.
Yeah, that's huge.
Right, that would be humongous. And people go, well, I guess you have to stack the Red Sox. Well, what happens if I told you that half the lineups are going to have the Red Sox? They're not profitable at that point because just like relative value, all the points that you get from the Red Sox stacks will have the lineups in the contest already. You're not going to get anything for that. Does that mean you fade Boston completely? Not necessarily. It just means that you ain't going to win that way. Even though it's the most probable outcome, it is over-owned for their probability. That's why looking at the bottom, when people see my nutso vomit stack sometimes, and I'm playing teams that have 1% chances of being the top stack, like I don't mind. Like here, like I would take a look at this chart right here yesterday. I didn't play GPPs yesterday. But based on this, now understand that Slate IQ is based on the plate IQ projections, not on the bat projections that I do use. So I have to adjust my winning percentage to some extent, because I can't re-simulate everything. But I knew yesterday the bat projections were much lower on the White Sox than the plate IQ projections. I also know they were much higher on the Blue Jays than the plate IQ projections.
Same. I had Blue Jays as a very good play. Anyway, continue.
Right, but based on the slate, the win percentage is based on the plate IQ projections, so it only shows 2.3%, and the field has them at 2.4%. Now, obviously, the ownership is not going to change. We're using the RG ownership, so I have to think in terms of, well, Toronto's not really 2.3; it's more like 4.5, and they're going to be under-owned. But if I just use the plate IQ projections, I'd look at this chart and go, when people ask, like, how do you figure out who to play? It's like, I could look right at this chart and I go, I want to play some Cincinnati, 1.7% chance of winning, 0.8% field ownership given to me. Baltimore, 1.5% chance of winning, 0.8% ownership. Now they're lower chances of winning, right? But they're almost double. They win almost twice as much as what the field will own them at, based on our projections. Now, you go down to the bottom, Texas. Like, do you have to go all the way that low to have a 0.8% chance? I mean, like the difference, it seems weird. It seems like there's not much difference between Baltimore and Texas, right? To some extent, right? But it's Baltimore will win twice as often. Even though 1.5% and 0.8% are like, oh, that's not that far away. It's like, no, it's double. It's double. I mean, like yes, and yes, the Texas stack will be less owned than what their winning chances is, but not by a dramatic amount, 38%. If I wanted to mix in some Texas, sure, I could have, if playing 100 lineups or whatever. But as you get lower down, like the difference between Toronto, even like let's say Cleveland. Like Cleveland is 2.2% to win, 2.5% of the field. So that's actually negative. So negative 9.9%. They still may be a better stack to use than Texas. Texas is 3 times less likely to win. Cleveland is not that overowned. So it's like you have to judge in comparison that maybe I want to use some Cleveland. Would they be my primary? Maybe not. But I would take a look at this and go, Minnesota? Maybe I don't want any Minnesota. 3.2% chance to win. Field is going to roster them at 4%. 20 on minus 20% difference. The White Sox, minus 24% difference. Especially since the bat had the White Sox even lower. Like, I would have just faded the White Sox. I probably wouldn't have had any of the White Sox. And but if they go up, they still have a 5.1% chance of being the top stack. I mean, like, if, oh my God, there was negative leverage and they still won. A White Sox stack, what? So that you have the percentages here. The point is to make money. The point is not to predict outcomes. So no matter what simulation methodology you use, whatever projections you use, the goal of DFS in the long run, playing it out, slate after slate after slate after slate, is to get your money in good. And getting your money in good, which is plus EV, positive expected value, is to put yourself in a position where the probability of your lineup winning is more than the amount of money that you're risking. So the more than the field is going to own them at. Because that is your ultimate goal in DFS for any DFS contest. I have X% chance of winning with this lineup, and based on what all of my opponents are doing, my lineup has a X% higher chance of winning than their lineups, because it's more likely to happen than their lineups, and you get paid for that. So if you had this slate in this example, Boston was in half the lineups of the contest on a 12-game slate, I would have no problem if they were if literally a 5-man Boston stack was half owned in a large field, 15,000 lineups. I would have absolutely no problem going to lineup HQ, looking for those X buttons, and just acting like the Red Sox didn't exist at all. Oh, but they have a 10 points. They have the highest chance of being. I don't care. At that ownership, I don't know how that ever will be profitable. Yeah, I guess you could use a one-off here and there. I guess, but if I played the slate out 10,000 times, I'd make so much more money not having the Red Sox than having.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Grinderslive Baseball Edition. Thank you, Dean and Grant, for breaking down some NBA. We got crunch time up after us, talking baseball and basketball. I'm sure there'll be a ton of news for an 11-game NBA slate. But I'm Stevie, and I'm joined today by Derek Carty. What's happening, Derek?
Not much. How's it going?
I mean, it's a 9-game slate, but it's actually like a really juicy tournament slate, so I'm kind of pumped. And you're already ready for happy hour with a button down, and we're ready to go.
Let's do it. I'm curious to see how you're gonna approach this for GPPs.
Yeah, well, I'm playing Burns, so like there's no sugarcoating that. So, but yeah, this is an interesting slate because we have a ton of pitching options outside of Burns, and we have very little hitting options, I think is the best way to put it. So, we'll break everything down. But before we do that, we are presented by SuperDraft.com. If you guys haven't checked them out, head on over there. Use the promo code Grinders for a $50 instant deposit alongside the $500 deposit match bonus. We do now have lineup HQ. SuperDraft is supported. So Devin's going to show you guys that, but we'll have some SuperDraft plays as well as we're getting through breaking everything down. We're going to start with pitching, and I'm going to start with a SuperDraft play that I love over there today at pitching. And hey, it's Burns because his multiplier is way too high for like what he's been able to do. Derek, I'm guessing you're with me. Burns is the top pitcher on the slate today.
Yeah, pretty easily. You know, it's silly what his SuperDraft multiplier is. Like a lot of times, like the top pitcher on the slate won't actually be the top guy on SuperDraft, and Burns is. He's the top overall guy. He's the top over there with the multiplier. It sounds like you're kind of taking the Jacob DeGrom approach with him tonight, where like a few days ago when DeGrom had his 15 strikeout outing, like he was clearly the best pitcher on the slate. I think I was on a show, I think it was with you that day maybe, where I was like, he's just too low owned, like just play him no matter what. Even in GPPs, like eat the chalk. It's not going to be chalky enough. And it sounds like you feel similarly about Burns tonight.
Listen, I'm all for getting different, but I don't think this is a spot you overthink this. Like this is a spot you play Corbin Burns. The Miami lineup is not good in general. So this is a great spot that, you want to just take advantage of. Corbin Burns, man. He's just, his strikeout rate is elite. His swinging strike rate is elite. Miami's not elite. They're one of the worst teams in baseball. And this is not a spot you overthink it. Cash games, tournaments, 1 pitcher site, 2 pitcher site, 15 pitcher sites. You're playing Corbin Burns today.
Yeah, the bat loves Corbin Burns in general. It thinks there's only 3 pitchers in baseball at this point better than Burns, and it's the obvious 3 that you would think of. The matchup is obviously really good. The closed roof in Milwaukee isn't awesome. It's going to be one of the warmer games here, but it's still just a fantastic spot. He doesn't project as well as DeGrom did the other day, but he's still far and away the best pitcher on this slate on what is kind of a mediocre pitching slate beyond him.
All right, well, let's talk about some other options here. We got Julio Urias, Tyler Mahle, Zach Wheeler, Trevor Rogers, kind of all in this like upper tier with Burns. Is there anybody in this range that you like?
I think the guy that I like the most after Burns is going to be the chalkier guy. It's going to be Trevor Rogers. The bat has liked Rogers all year coming into the year. Like it just thinks he's a good pitcher, and his matchup is pretty good too. Milwaukee is, when they're full strength, I think Milwaukee is a much better offense than people believe they are. Milwaukee is nowhere near full strength right now. Their lineup is bad. Outside of Avisel Garcia and I guess Wong and Hira, maybe, like the rest of the lineup is just trash. Tyrone Taylor's hitting second. Manny Pena, a freaking bad catcher, is hitting cleanup for them tonight. Like that's what their lineup has come to. And so Trevor Rogers projects very, very well. He has a short leash. Burns actually has a short leash. People, as good as Burns has been, I don't think people realize that like Burns, there is a little bit of a longevity risk with him that isn't there for other pitchers of his caliber. It's kind of like a glass now thing where he's really, really good, but like there are going to be games where he just gets pulled after, 70 or 80 pitches. Rogers also though has a little bit of a short leash, but the lineup is so good. The matchup is so good that they're the clear top 2 guys today, I think. And so just playing Rogers alongside Burns and Cash, I think is definitely the approach.
Yeah, I said like over on scores and odds today, like one of my favorite props is the over 7.5 strikeouts for Rogers. And then this lineup came out and it's hard not to love it. Even like I was expecting a couple more lefties in here for the Brewers, but the righties that are in there are just so bad that Rogers should have a really good outing here. Don't love Zach Wheeler in this spot. I do think like if we didn't have as many pitching options on this slate, that he's someone that you could potentially play. But considering price and everything else, and considering the fact that like he might push 20% ownership, like I think this is a spot you stay away from Wheeler. Don't like Tyler Mahle up against the Dodgers, and I respect the Reds enough not to like Julio Urias in this spot either. So like really when I'm looking at over 8K, it's Rogers, it's Burns, and Charlie Morton, I think, is someone that is very playable. You know, we keep talking about how much the Cubs are striking out. Like, it's not a fluke. This team's striking out a ton.
Yeah, I think Morton is a really good play today. I think this version of the Cubs lineup is not as strikeout heavy as other ones we've seen lately. Like Nico Horner's in there, Eric Sogard's in there, David Bodie's in there. Like this isn't like the 27% underlying strikeout rate team we've seen in the past. And Morton, it looks like, is going to be pretty chalky. Like we haven't projected as the third highest owned pitcher. I think he's fine. But if he's going to be that high owned, I don't think he's a guy I would go overboard with. Like you mentioned not liking Wheeler, but Wheeler is projected, at almost half of that ownership. And he projects basically the same as Morton. He's more expensive, but I don't hate Wheeler here. Like Wheeler is just as good of a pitcher as Morton. They're like the exact same talent level overall. So if you're going to get an ownership discount on it, go for it, especially because Wheeler's matchup isn't bad. He's getting a nice park upgrade going into Busch Stadium. I really don't think the St. Louis lineup is like amazing, and they actually project as a more strikeout heavy lineup than this version of the Cubs. So I think Wheeler's actually kind of interesting if he's going to be a little overlooked.
The only thing that I'll say, and I don't know like your take on it, but it looks like the weather for St. Louis is one of the better like spots on the slate. It's 77, 15 to 20 mile an hour winds blowing out to I think it was like left center or something. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We have a lot of games still like in the 50s and 60s, and like this one is one of the better weather games on the slate.
Yeah, for what it's worth, the bat has the wind blowing more across the field, but if it is blowing out, it is very heavy wind. So that's something to keep in mind and keep an eye on as we get closer.
Yeah. Let's get down under the 8K range because there's so many interesting options down here. Is there anybody that's like instantly standing out to you once we get under 8K?
Yeah, I think there's several of them, but I think Ohtani is interesting. I think DeSclafani is interesting. I think Manaea is interesting. You can make a case for Davy Garcia or Austin Gomber if you want to, get really wacky. I think any of those guys are definitely in play for GPPs tonight.
All right. I was waiting to kind of see what we were looking at for the Rays lineup. What's your thoughts here on Sean Manaea going up against this Rays lineup?
I'm a big fan of Sean Manaea in general. This is a Rays lineup that I guess similar to the Cubs isn't as strikeout heavy as some lineups we've seen them roll out recently, it looks like. But I still think Manaea is a good pitcher. He's pitching against them in a pitcher's park. So I think for his price, for his low ownership, I think Manaea is very much in play here. And unlike a lot of these guys, Manaea has a pretty solid leash, and that gives him ceiling for a GPP that, certain guys don't have.
Yeah, I like Sean Manaea. Like when this lineup came out, there's some power at the bottom of the order, but there's a lot of strikeouts too. Brasu, Zanino, Adames, like these guys strike out at high clips. Like I think over 30% against lefties since the start of last season. So I like Sean Manaea probably more than I should. But again, like you said too, like if he's pitching well, they'll let him go deep. The other thing that we're looking at here with Ohtani is he might walk 5 guys and strike out 10 guys.
It is very possible.
this is a good matchup for him too. I was expecting him to be a little bit more popular on this slate, especially with a lot of people paying up for Burns. Do you think we see the ownership shift a little bit more towards him, or do you think Desclafani really is going to be around 20%?
I wasn't expecting Desclafani to be projected for like that much ownership, but I can see why. Like the Colorado Rockies right now project as the worst offense in baseball. And people think they're a little better than that because of Coors Field. But when you take them out of Coors Field, this is a bad offense. And they are easily the most strikeout prone offense in all of baseball. So this is a really good matchup for Desclafani. We have good weather going on here. It's 51 degrees. It is the only game under 60. And it's about 50. So this is a good spot for him. If he's going to be high-ish owned, that makes me like him a little bit less. But in the context of this slate, just pure projection point per dollar, I think he's right there with Morton, with Ohtani, with, everyone except for Burns and Rogers.
Yeah, just kind of looking at it, he's going to get plenty of run support too, because the Giants are going to crush Gomber. Gomber's going to walk a ton of people and the Giants are going to take advantage of it, but that might give away my sneaky stack of the day. But once we get down past like Ohtani, it's kind of a wasteland. I think this is a day that you're Ohtani or up, because Davies can't throw the ball straight right now. Wainwright is okay, but I respect the Phillies lineup enough. Garcia is okay, but he's another guy, like, we don't know the leash. We don't know control issues. Rich Hill against Oakland in Tampa, you could probably make an argument for him 3 years ago, but he stinks now. Gomber stinks. Lyles stinks. Sheffield's going to be good eventually, but he's facing Houston. And Matt Harvey's facing the Yankees. So am I missing anything down here? Am I dismissing people too fast?
I think dismissing Davy Garcia and maybe Gomber maybe a little too quickly. Davy Garcia is a guy who projects as a decent pitcher, as a slightly above average major league pitcher. And the matchup is obviously good against Baltimore in it's still a hitter's park, but not as hitter friendly as Yankee Stadium is. You're right that there are leash issues. We don't know how deep he's going to go, but he has been pitching at the alternate site. He's been working on things. So presumably he's built up to have a normal workload here. So I think in a GPP at low ownership, I think there is plenty of upside in this spot for him. I don't like Gomber quite as much, but just from a pure price ownership standpoint, 6.5K, 2% ownership in the best pitching weather on the slate, big park upgrade out of Coors, even a park upgrade over where he used to pitch in Busch Stadium. Like, I think you can make a case for him based on, it's not like he projects great, but he projects for 12 points. If he hits a ceiling of 18 or 20 for 6.5K at no ownership, I think that's fine.
If you're playing 150 lineups, sure. If you're narrowing down to like maybe like a 5-pitcher pool, I don't think you I don't think you go down, like you can go Ohtani, Manaea, Morton, Rogers, Burns. I think that would be like, if I was telling you to play 5 pitchers today, those would be the 5 pitchers I would say. So I think it depends on contest selection, how many teams you're playing, and just stuff along those lines, because I don't think this slate sets up to needing to play Gomber, but he's going to be low owned. So if he pitches really well, take advantage of that. But, it could work out too, right? Like you said, the pitching weather is really good. It could easily work out. We don't have that lineup yet, right?
I don't think so. And you're right. Like, he wouldn't crack my top 5 or anything, but if you are digging deeper, I think there's a case for a guy like that.
And like, there's a potential of Longoria and Yaz not being in the lineup. So like, those guys are kind of banged up.
Yeah. That's the case. You have a real sleeper on your hands, I think.
And hopefully we'll get the Giants lineup before we get out of here, and be able to kind of go back and touch on that a little bit more, depending on what the lineup looks like. So is there anything else here for pitching?
I think that pretty much covers it.
So before we get into catcher, RG Premium, we're offering subscribers the option to select specific sports for their premium subscription now, or for the combo premium, which includes everything except for NASCAR. Just get NASCAR. It pays for itself. Use the promo code in the description. Devin will post it here in chat right now. That'll get you guys $10 off of your first month for either combo or a single sport. So take advantage of that. We got a ton of stuff going on right now with basketball, with baseball, with PGA, MMA, all that stuff going on right now. I'm probably missing things. So make sure you guys are checking that out. And if you have Lineup HQ, if you have premium, add the bat. The bat is the best for projections for baseball. And, let's continue to win money. So let's get into catching here. Derek didn't even ask me to plug the bat. I just do it because his projections are awesome. And it's hard for me to say because he doesn't like BVP. Let's talk catcher.
Liking him despite that shortcoming of mine.
Yeah, listen, credit where credit's due. I don't give you enough credit. Let's talk catcher. I think this is a wasteland spot today. This is a spot we were just chatting before the show, and I was kind of joking about playing Torrens, but I might actually end up playing him. I think if I was going to pick a catcher today outside of a stack, it would probably be Sean Murphy. What do you like here at catcher?
Yeah, I didn't consider the Torrens thing a joke at all. Torrens projects as the best point per dollar catcher on this slate. I have no problem playing Torrens in a stack, in a cash game lineup, as a one-off in a GPP. Totally fine. However you want to play Torrens, I think that is I think that's totally fine. The Seattle Mariners are kind of perpetually underpriced they're not a good offense, but they're just always a better offense than what their price indicates they are. Is totally fine. If you have the money, I think it's also perfectly justifiable to go up to Gary Sanchez. The Yankees are the best offense tonight, and I don't think you're going to get a lot of arguments on that. Lately, there's been a lot of people oh, do I have to play the Yankees? They've been so bad this year. It's they're the Yankees. They're going to be fine. Play them. Tonight, I think people are going to play them. They're against Matt Harvey. They're in Camden Yards. And Gary Sanchez, despite his frustrating nature, is a very, very, very good hitting catcher by catcher standards. He's a lot of home run or bust, but he is a good hitting catcher. And so I like Sanchez. I like Torrens. I think you can make a case for other guys because that's just kind of the nature of the position tonight. Martin Maldonado with the platoon advantage against Sheffield. That's fine. Kurt Suzuki against Jordan Lyles. That's fine, or play a catcher with your stack.
I will say Travis d'Arnaud is in a great spot too. The Braves are, probably my favorite offense on the slate. I'm fading the Yankees. I think the Yankees are in a great spot, but just kind of looking at ownership on the Yankees, especially on FanDuel where they're almost free. That's how I'm going to get different on this slate. I'm going to play Burns. I'm going to play the top pitchers, but I'm going to fade the Yankees and just hope they don't score 10 runs. So, Travis d'Arnaud is another guy that I really like. And then you mentioned Kurt Suzuki. The Angels stack and lineup could potentially look really bad today, but they're in a really good spot against Lyles and this bullpen. So it might look super ugly, Derek, but just kind of you're just going to have to roll with it because they're in a great spot.
Yeah, I really do like the Angels today. It sounds like I'm not alone. It looks like we do have them projected as one of the highest owned teams, but the Angels are in a good spot. Lyles is not good. The weather here is awesome. It's the only game over 80 degrees. The roof is open. There's 15-mile-an-hour winds blowing out. So this is definitely a good spot for the Angels.
All right, catcher's done. We're both in agreement that catcher stinks today. Play whoever you want to catcher today. Let's talk first base. I can't tell you how excited I am that Freddie Freeman is 5% projected own. I think not only is he the best first baseman, I think he's the best hitter on this slate. So I love the fact that nobody's playing him today. I know he's expensive, but there's so many cheap outfielders and other positions that it's so easy to make Burns and Freeman work. I love free money Freddie today.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Freddie in general. 6K is a lot for me to stomach against. It's not like Davies is a good pitcher, but he's not a bad pitcher either. He's kind of middle of the road type guy. I guess on this slate, maybe he's one of the weaker ones. So Freddie's clearly the top first baseman overall. 6K is a lot. I'm okay going down and punting first base. I think there's plenty of guys you can do it with. I mentioned liking Seattle already with Torrens. Evan White is hitting 5th. He's 3.1K. I think White is a perfectly fine option here. Jose Urquidy is a guy with a very large reverse platoon split. And so righty for White actually does set up quite well. So I like White. He's actually projected as the highest owned guy, it looks like. The guy that I like almost as much, and I think is an awesome GPP pivot, is Brad Miller. Brad Miller is basically the same price. He's leading off for Philly tonight against Adam Wainwright. Miller is one of those, range of outcomes guys like Gary Sanchez or whoever. He's got power, but 3% ownership in this spot, that is silly. I think Brad Miller is an awesome play.
Well, I'm going to talk about Alex Baldino when we get over to third base today, because he's batting leadoff at 2.4K. I don't think you have to use him at first base, but that's another reason that I think it's not hard to fit in Freddie Freeman. We'll get into Jared Walsh when we get in the outfield. I think he's another guy that's super playable on this slate. And the Dodgers are going to be somewhat lower owned on this slate. They're expensive. Nobody's going to really be playing them. So going Max Muncy, going with the Dodgers stack, they're one of the best teams in baseball. You can really stack them against anybody you want. So, another guy that you could potentially look at. Is there anything that we're missing here for first base?
Not really. There's nobody else I really love here.
All right. Moving on. Second base. I think you're going to like Odor a lot.
I mean, I liked Odor before it was cool to like Odor. Now Odor's going to be chalk, it sounds like. So that makes me feel a lot better about playing Odor, because the bat always wants to play Odor. But the Yankees are in this great spot tonight. They're against Matt Harvey. They're in Camden Yards. Odor has the platoon advantage. Odor is hitting cleanup. Matt Harvey doesn't strike anybody out. So Odor, even though he strikes out a bunch, should hopefully have more of a chance to make contact tonight, hopefully send one over the fence. And he's still just absurdly cheap for a guy who plays what might be the worst position in DFS. I mean, outside of catcher, second base this year has just felt really, really bad every slate. And yeah, he's just too cheap for being the cleanup hitter in the best offense on the slate. So love Odor tonight, and I'm not ashamed to say it this time.
I like him a lot as well. And I'm probably not going to stack the Yankees. Like I said, I might actually use Odor as a chalky one-off, which is a terrible idea most of the time, but he's 3.1K batting 4th against Matt Harvey. And this is just a spot that if he hits a home run, you're going to be way behind. So, I hate the idea of playing a chalky one-off, but I think he's in play. If you're not playing him, obviously Albies in a Brave stack is very in play, but the guy that I'm going to talk about these guys a lot today, but Oakland, Jed Lowry batting second, 4,200, kind of in that mid-range at second base. I like Oakland a lot in this spot. I worry about the good end of the Tampa bullpen, but if Hill gets blown up here, we could get that mediocre part of the Rays bullpen, maybe. And they have a great bullpen, but there are some mediocre arms in there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting play. Hill's a guy also you can steal bases on. So it's not like Oakland has a ton of speed, but there is going to be a little of that upside baked in too. I think they're one of the more interesting off the board offenses tonight.
I'm trying to think anything else for second base. I think Ty France is somebody that is going to be pretty popular today. We're going to talk about the Seattle righties a lot because we're on the same page. I like Haniger and those guys a lot today. So I don't even hate going Tommy Edman against Wheeler. It sounds like we're going to have pretty decent weather in that game. So yeah, I think second base is a position that if you're trying to get off of Odor, you're potentially looking at these guys. Horner is 2.7K batting leadoff against Morton. So another cheap potential leadoff bat.
Yeah, I think the Cubs are very sneaky tonight, especially if Morton's going to be the third highest owned pitcher on the slate. I think a Cubs leverage stack makes a ton of sense. And you have 3 guys here who project pretty well point per dollar. You don't want to be playing all of them. You want to mix in some of the actual good Cub hitters. But playing a guy like Horner or Sogard or Bodie, I think they're all totally fine. Morton too. He's a guy who can have a very short leash. So it could be a similar situation like what you described with Rich Hill. Also a guy that you can steal on a little bit. So I like Horner more at shortstop, but I do like him quite a bit today.
All right. I think that's it for second base. I don't think we missed anything. You can always play DJ LeMahieu. He's expensive, but you can always play him if you want like 3 base hits and probably 3 singles. But LeMahieu is always good. Let's go to third base. Another position that you can play, Odor. We talked about Baldino. You know, he's 2.4K batting leadoff against Urias. What else are we potentially looking at here at third base?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned Sogard at second. You can play him at third here also. I like Odor more at second than at third, in no small part because Gio Urshela is batting fifth tonight for the Yankees, and he's 3.4K, and so he is really underpriced also. So I like Urshela quite a bit. I think Blandino, point per dollar wise is really good here. Jose Rojas, we talked about the Angels a little bit and why we like them. We don't have a lineup there yet, but he's projected to hit fifth right now. So I think he would be a really interesting play. You mentioned the Braves. If you're doing a Brave stack, Austin Riley is a great part of that. I think Baltimore is a really interesting off the board stack tonight. And Maikel Franco, the cleanup hitter, is one of the best parts of that stack here.
Listen, I like Baltimore a lot. We're going to get into DJ Stewart as like one of my favorite value plays today. So don't mind that at all. But yeah, there's a lot of third base options. Like if you're not paying up for like Bregman or Chapman on FanDuel, you're playing Chapman. Like he's way too cheap on FanDuel. I think he's like 2.9K. He's in that like value range. So I really like Chapman over there on FanDuel. But yeah, there's on DraftKings, like you could play anybody really. Like that's why ownership is so spread out outside of like Bregman and Odor, because there's really like your third baseman is likely going to come from your stack today.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Shortstop, like this is a position that I say it all the time. You're either probably paying up for Correa, Seager, Suarez, Story, or I guess Torres would be in that conversation today too, or you're going down to like Horner or some of these other guys.
Yeah, that's kind of the approach. And tonight I kind of favor the going down version of that. Like Seager's facing Malley, who has he's looking really good. Like he's just year over year improving his velocity, improving his spin rate. Like the results are good. So I don't think it's a great spot for Seager. You're not getting a discount on him. Seager against Sheffield, again, a pretty decent pitcher. Or did I say Correa against Sheffield? Glaber, I think, is fine. If you want to go up, I think he's reasonably enough priced. Story against Desclafani outside of Coors and that really good pitching weather. Again, not ideal. So for me, I think going down is probably the approach that I like. And we mentioned him at second base, but I like Nico Horner a lot here at shortstop. Second, I'm on my boy Odor. But Nico Horner is another good way to save. We mentioned all the reasons why, Morton can have a short leash. Morton can be run on. So I think Horner is a pretty solid play here. Elvis Andrus, I think, is interesting enough against Hill, especially given the stolen base potential here. I mentioned earlier, like Hill, you can really run on. So I think Andrus at that price is pretty appealing. Jose Iglesias, as part of your Angels stack, I think is really good here. Yeah, that's kind of shortstop. I think it's go up or go down, like you said.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there one more time. I really like Corey Seager. He's just an elite hitter. Like he's like Tatis. You just play these guys. It doesn't matter who they're facing. But yeah, like Didi is another one. I don't know if you mentioned Didi, but he's another guy like I don't hate here against Wainwright. All right, we have a million plays in the outfield today. What's standing out to you in the outfield?
Mike Trout, if he's in the lineup, is the clear best option here. He's Mike Trout for one thing, and he's in this awesome spot where the Angels, outside of the Yankees, are probably, assuming they're full strength, are the top, the next top offense here. Trout's expensive, but Trout is amazing. Lyles is bad. We have this over 80-degree weather. We have the wind blowing out. Trout is fantastic. I think Justin Upton in the exact same spot at 3.6K is just way too cheap. I think he is a fantastic play on this slate. Obviously, we're going to like Judge. We're going to like Stanton. We're going to like Acuna. But if I'm spending up, I do think Trout is clearly my priority here. Mitch Haniger, we've mentioned some of the Seattle righties already. Mitch Haniger is perpetually underpriced he's a borderline great hitter, just borderline great in terms of raw baseball skills. And this spot is really good for him. So I like Haniger a lot. In terms of like cheaper stuff, like Austin Hayes, I mentioned Baltimore being a really off the radar, but good stack today. Austin Hayes at 2.6K, definitely a good part of that. Kyle Lewis in more or less the same spot as Haniger is a good value. DJ Stewart for the O's is going to be a good value. So there is a lot to like at outfield today.
Yeah, I really like DJ Stewart. I mentioned him on the morning grind. I wrote him up on Lineup HQ as a conviction play today. Schebler is somebody that else, like he's another guy that's cheap that could potentially bat he could bat like fifth today with Ohtani pitching. Like, so Schebler's another guy, like I want to see where he's hitting in the lineup against Lyles. But again, that Angels stack is not going to look juicy, but it definitely sets up really solid. And one other guy that I wanted to point out that I really, really like today is Bryce Harper. I think he's going to be somebody that completely flies under the radar. Maybe if Trout doesn't play, we start to see people shift to Harper and some of these other guys. But I like Bryce Harper a lot. I think Wainwright is a perfect type of matchup for Bryce Harper. And Wainwright's going to throw strikes. Harper is a guy that is very patient at the plate, and this sets up really good for him. So I haven't even looked at the BVP, but I'm sure it's there, and I'm sure Harper is winning. And then Jared Walsh is another guy that I really like. He is a super draft play that I really like over there, 1.75. He projects really well. I was looking at it earlier. I think he's one of the highest point per dollar projections over there on SuperDraft. So make sure you guys are checking him out. You mentioned Haniger already, so I don't have to get into that. And then you can always take shots on like any of the Oakland guys, like Mark Canha or these guys that potentially even have a little bit of speed. You mentioned Rich Hill. He's a guy that's easy to steal on, so there's upside in that as well. So yeah, there's a ton of outfielders today. We got cheap, we got expensive, we got plenty of ways to fit Freddie Freeman in because that's all that matters at the end of the day today. So is there anybody that we're missing that you want to touch on?
I think that kind of covers it.
All right. We've been taking questions over there on YouTube chat. What's up, YouTube chat? Forgot to say hi earlier. Appreciate you guys kind of following along with us as we've been going here. I agree, Jason Mayo, that Cardi loves Bryce's BVP. He just doesn't want to admit it. That's okay. If you guys have any questions, throw them over there in YouTube chat. We'll get to them. We have some questions already lined up, and then we'll roll questions into crunch time, unless we get some lineups, and we'll go over that as well. First question is, who do you have that's going deep tonight?
I mean, I think the best bet is going to have to be on one of these Yankees. And if there was ever a night to call a home run for my boy Odor, I think tonight is it. But just in like a raw sense, Mike Trout is going to have the best chance of anybody tonight.
Yeah, I already said I like Harper to go yard today. I really like it. I'm pulling up his BVP. I got to look now. I'm so curious what his BVP is, and I just want to get Derek's reaction to me looking up BVP. And what do you think it? No, I just want to know. Like, knowing Harper against Wainwright, do you think the BVP is good or bad?
I would expect it to be pretty good because it's just a good matchup.
It is a great matchup, and usually when you look at BVP, it lines up to what the matchup data says, and the matchup says it's an awesome matchup. And of course, Bryce Harper has very good BVP against Wainwright. Doesn't shock me. Doesn't shock Derek either, because BVP is real.
Thing about BVP, a lot of it is just it's a good matchup. Like, everyone's like,
yep.
Look at Harper's BVP against Julio Teheran. It's like, well, of course, Teheran is terrible. He has a wide platoon. Harper's one of the best left-handed hitters in baseball. Of course he's hit Teheran well because it's a great spot.
Listen, I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, it's always nice when the BVP lines up with a great matchup. Any interest in Urias since the Cincinnati lineup sucks?
I haven't seen the Cincinnati lineup, I don't think, since it came out.
Baldino, Winker, Castellanos, Suarez, Senzel, Stevenson, India, Farmer.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a weaker lineup than normal. The problem with Urias in general is just that he pitches for the Dodgers and he pitches for Dave Roberts and he has a short leash. And, that lineup isn't great, but it's not like it's overly strikeout heavy. I just think there's better options.
I would have almost liked it better if like Votto and those guys were in there because, adding some of these right-handed bats like Senzel, he's not a big strikeout guy. Farmer's a guy that's not going to hit the ball to the ballpark, but he's a guy that's going to put the ball in play. And then like we have a very small sample size on India, but he's a guy that's patient and he, tries to put the ball in play and walks. So I would almost rather like Nyquin and Votto and Barnhart been in the lineup for Urias than this lineup because I think this lineup actually is worse. Talk me off of Miami. Why are you playing Miami?
I'm not playing Miami.
No, somebody said like that was one of the questions. Please talk me off of Miami. Like I'm just reacting to why are you playing Miami? No,
Miami is getting too cute. I get why people want to do it. They're like, oh, well, Burns is the best pitcher on the slate. And so I can like stack against him and I'll be super different. And there's a difference between being different and being stupid. And not to say you're stupid, questioner, but this is not like a smart approach. Burns is too good. Miami is too bad. The chances that Miami puts up enough runs on him, especially because they're not like overly underpriced, it's just not there. If you want to play an offense against a chalky pitcher and have a better odds of success doing it, play the Cubs against Charlie Morton tonight.
Well, I will say that I said this on the morning grind too. I think one of the best value bets today is Miami money line. It's like plus 150. The Milwaukee lineup stinks. Two good pitchers, but that doesn't mean I'm sacking the Marlins. I hope the game is like 1-0 Marlins. Like that's what I would hope for. And I don't even think like Marlins get the run off of Burns. So yeah, this is going to be one of those games where it's probably like 3-2 at the end of the day, 3-1, something like crazy. Like it has a 6.5 total for a reason. Like we don't see a lot of 6.5 totals in baseball. It has a reason that it's 6.5. Next question is there any good umpires? I had looked earlier. It's Monday. It's so hard for umpire data.
Yeah, we don't have any umpires announced yet.
Yep. So, best starting pitchers for today. I think we kind of talked on this. We could touch on it really quick. We're both very high on Burns, but what else do you have as far as best SPs today?
Yeah, it's clearly Burns up top. It's clearly Trevor Rogers after him. And then in GPPs, you're mixing in guys like maybe Morton, although I think he might be a little too high owned, honestly. I'd rather mix in Ohtani, DeSclafani, Manaea. If you really want to get crazy, Davey Garcia, Austin Gomber, maybe Zach Wheeler. But, Burns and Rogers, just in a raw sense, are clearly the top two everywhere.
Is Tatis on a hot streak? Do you not like hot streaks? Is that why they asked that question? He's not even on the slate.
Probably. Hot streaks are the same as BVP. Like they happen, they're not predictive of what's going to happen next.
He could be facing the worst pitcher in baseball and go 0-4. I like hot streaks, don't get me wrong, but easily could go 0-4. Baseball has high variance, and you can't play somebody just because they're hitting the ball really well. You can, and you hope that it continues, but that doesn't tell you he's going to go 4-4 the next day. I might actually agree with Cardi on something. That's terrible. I got to change my mind. DK GPP thoughts on Atlanta stack. They're my favorite stack, so I'll let you kind of touch on it.
No, I'm totally fine with an Atlanta stack. I think they're all extremely expensive, but they project just in a raw sense as the third best stack of the night per the bat. So you have to pay for them, but you're probably going to get them at lower ownership and you're going to get plenty of upside. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I love them. Anybody, are you interested at all in a Baltimore stack? I think like a secondary for sure.
Absolutely. As a secondary, even as a full stack, I don't think Baltimore is bad tonight. I think in this spot, they have a little more upside than they might normally have. The prices on them are really good. I really like Baltimore as an off the board stack tonight.
Yeah, I was just looking at my 3 entries, and 2 of them have Severino, so I hope he has a good game. So there you go. Do I have a best bet for tonight? Yeah, like my best bet tonight is Rogers over 7.5 strikeouts. I think that, like, I don't even know what you have the bat projected for Rogers, but I'm sure it's probably really close to that.
I think it's actually a little under. I think it's about 7, not because it doesn't like him or the matchup, just because the leash for him has been quite short. So getting to 7 might be a little challenging, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets there.
He only needs 30 pitches, Derek. That's all he needs.
It might be all he needs.
I will say, like, the lineup is not good whatsoever for the Brewers today. Like, just up and down. It's a really weak lineup. So that would be the best bet for me today. I like it a lot.
And it's a very heavy lineup. So like that potential is absolutely there for him.
Yeah, and a lot of guys that we really don't know what to expect anything from, like McKinney. We don't have a ton of data of him lefty. And just the bottom of the order in general. And Taylor, we really don't know what to expect from him. So, you know, Colton Wong is a guy that puts the ball in play a lot, but he's going to ground out to second base 3 times, which kind of stinks for the strikeout. But Evan White's birthday narrative, by the way, I know you mentioned Evan White. So somebody in chat said that 2 favorite non-Yankee stacks today.
I mean, I think the chalky ones are going to be Seattle and the Angels, and for good reason. They're probably the best 2. But if we're getting a little weirder, if we're playing the ownership game, which you should be in GPPs, I think Orioles and I think Cubs maybe are my next 2 that are really interesting.
Yeah, I obviously, like I've said multiple times, I really like Atlanta today. I know they're expensive, but you can easily make it work. The other stack that I really like is the Giants. I think they're super interesting today. It's going to be either 2 runs or they could put up like 7 or 8 runs in this spot. So, and the lineup could be really ugly, which means you'd have a ton of value to potentially go San Francisco and Atlanta and Burns. So, you know, that's one of the reasons I like the Giants as well. Lowest price pitcher for tournaments on FanDuel.
I think DeSclafani is really interesting there. He's the top point per dollar guy on the whole slate on FanDuel. His ownership looks pretty low. The matchup, like we said, is awesome. Awful offense, very high strikeout offense, great pitching weather, and the price and ownership for him there look right.
I definitely don't hate that. I like Sean Manaea on FanDuel too. I think he's super interesting. You talked about his leash and that bonus that you get for a quality start. I think he's a guy that is a high probability to get a quality start. I think he's 3 out of 4 games he's had a quality start this season. So I really like him. I think he's one of the guys under 9K that can put up like 50 plus on FanDuel. So Manaea is another one that I like on FanDuel as well. It's Aaron Judge's birthday today too.
Got to play those birthday narratives. Dean just posted something in chat. It looks like Ohtani's hitting tonight. So that'll be fun.
So okay, we talked about this on the morning grind. Tell me if I'm wrong. They sacrifice the DH for the game if he hits, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so Mike Trout, Ohtani, and Rendon are all in the lineup for the Angels tonight. So yes. I'm like 99% sure that's what happens. Like he would have to come out of the game when they pull him from pitching, unless they put him in the field, and the pitcher spot becomes the DH spot, or stays the DH spot or whatever. So I'm just saying, could be wrong. You can smash the like button and tell me if I'm wrong or right.
I'm pretty sure that's right. He did get pulled in the last game that he pitched and hit. So I'm pretty sure that's the rule.
And they'll just pinch hit for the pitcher every time. It's not a big deal. I'm just saying, like, that's all. We talked about this on the podcast this morning, me and Cheese. But I never actually looked it up because I think I'm right. So I'm just gonna roll with that.
So would you say if you want to go deep in GPPs, maybe play some of those Angels bench hitters tonight?
No, I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't recommend that either.
I will say that it makes the stack stink a little bit more because, like, you're gonna have a lot of pinch hitting for the Angels now instead of like not having pinch hitting. So like later in the game. So I worry about that a little bit more for the stack, and you don't get points for Ohtani hitting. So I wish when he was like pitching and DHing, like you could select him as a hitter. That would be super interesting. Knowing that like when he's done pitching, you're not getting any more at bats. But anyway, any love for a Ranger stack today?
Not really. Not really.
I could see if you're going to go like Willie Calhoun, Gallo, and Lowe, and just kind of hope that like Ohtani is a guy that struggles with command a little bit. Like he doesn't know where he's throwing the baseball, but when he does throw it well, he strikes out guys. And like, you know, if these guys are walking or if Ohtani leaves one over the plate, there's plenty of power in this lineup where they can definitely get it done. So the Angels lineup is out. It's Fletcher, Ohtani, Trout, Rendon, Walsh, Upton, Pujols, Iglesias, Suzuki. So no Schebler in the lineup either.
Interesting.
Oh, that lineup stinks. It's a good lineup, and like they probably crush Lyles with that lineup, but it still stinks.
It makes the stack tough or less.
Yes,
like you said.
And yes, Derek, he does not get points for hitting. That was actually a question in chat, not you. Burns and Frazier.
The lock of all locks. If he got pitching and hitting points, like he'd project for like 35 points.
He'd have to be like 13 or 14K to make it even relevant. Burns and Frazier, part of Yankee stack, or Rogers and Stanton or Judge.
Wait, say that one more time.
It says Burns and Frazier, part of a Yankee stack, or Rogers and Stanton or Judge. So it's Burns and Frazier or Rogers / Stanton or Judge. Like you can pick one of those. Like,
I mean, either one is honestly fine. Both are going to be chalky approaches. I think maybe I go the Burns approach. Frazier will be at least like a lesser owned part of that Yankee stack, and Burns is really good.
Yeah, like I'll go Burns there too, just because he's the best pitcher on the slate and you should play him. And I like Rogers a lot, but it's still Burns. What about the A's in a FanDuel GPP? Yeah, like I like it a lot because they're cheap and Chapman's way too cheap.
Yeah, on FanDuel I can see it a little more than on DraftKings. I think they're fine.
Yep. I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. Jerry Meals ump in the Cubs game.
Do we have that yet? Hasn't come through for me yet, but hitters umpire, right? Jerry Meals. So I mean, I already said I kind of like the Cubs stack.
So there you go. You like Fletcher batting leadoff? No. He's like the guy you always leave out of your Angels stack because he gets singles and walks, and that's it.
Yeah, he's just not good. He has zero power.
All right, last question.
Obsession with Fletcher. I just don't understand it.
It's because he's batting leadoff all the time. Last question is, do you have any interest in a Houston stack?
Yeah, I do. I think they're a team very much like Atlanta tonight, where you have to pay for them if you want them. But I think they project after the Yankees, Houston is the number 2 projected raw points team on the slate for the bat. So I do like Houston quite a bit.
Right. Well, appreciate you guys watching the show, hanging out with us. We have Kevin Roth, Andy Means, and Cheese is Good, Mr. Dave Potts coming up for crunch time afterwards. He is Derek Carty. I'm Stevie TPFL. Good luck, everyone. We'll see you guys next time.